So last time we took a commercial solution, the Wearing All Glitter Potions, and two fairly highly sheening inks in an attempt to make the most problematic ink as far as clogging or just not writing in a consistent form. And what I found at least was adding the glitter potion to these sheening inks actually significantly lessen the effects that I would typically see with sheening inks, which typically is the ink kind of crystallizing on the tip of the nib, preventing it from flowing. And once you wipe it off with like a wet paper towel, it gets going again. Really, all I saw was the glitter potion added what you would typically see with any shimmer ink, and that is over time the shimmer clogs up in the feed, and at least in my experience on these was that it just prevented the shimmer from flowing through and eventually would all kind of dump out at once and then kind of write as normal for a while. So this time, based on a comment I had in the last video, we are going to bump it up a notch, and rather than using a commercial solution like the glitter potion here, we are going to make our own shimmer ink and add it to one of these highly sheening inks here to see if that does anything better. And based on a cursory Google search, there were a number of products listed, but the main one I saw was the Pearl X mica powders. And while I don't have any of those, I was able to pick up some mica powders from the dollar store. So this pack here, little capsules of mica powder, costs just over $1 with tax. So we will be adding a very small amount of that to a sample vial and roughly 5 milliliters of ink, which is what I ended up doing with the glitter potion originally. And we'll see how that works out this time. So between these two inks, I'm going to use the nitrogen rather than the skull and roses. I just feel it'll show the shimmer a little bit better since it is a lighter blue. So we will take our sample vial here, which is one I cleaned out. From a sample I'd previously picked up from Goulet Pens a while back. To match our glitter potion, I'm going to be using the blue mica powder here, as I picked up the Frost Shimmer on the glitter potion here, which has a blue shimmer in it, although it's hard to tell once it's all settled out. Now with these, since they are actually pigmented, I have a feeling it will change the color of the ink, but we will see and test that out. So got that open there. I'm going to use the back of this plastic fork here. It's got a little dip in it, so I should be able to dish out just a very teeny tiny amount into this sample vial. I have no idea if this will be too much, not enough, or even just the right amount, but it is less than the little tiny tapered tip on the inside there, just to give you a reference for how much I put in there. So I typically use these little plastic pipettes when I'm filling up any of the sample vials. It just makes it nice and easy to do. If I can get a really full squeeze on these, they are right around 3 milliliters, but usually you don't quite end up getting the full amount there. So that was about a little over 2.5. So we'll just do another one of those, and then it should give us the 5 mils that I added initially to the glitter potion. With those, I did a 5 milliliter dose of the ink and then a half mil of the glitter potion. Get the cap back on this nice and tight and give it a shake, see what happens. And while you should most definitely allow any sort of ink mixture that you make sit for a while just to see what happens, for the sake of this video, I'm going to ignore that, as it would be quite funny if something horrible happened, so we'll see what happens. I'm going to grab another one of these pens that I put the glitter potions into. That way it's as apples to apples as we can make it. And we'll see how the pen reacts to that. So this one's got kind of a minty green accent to the aluminum pieces on the inside. Get the plunger all the way down. Give this a nice shake. Make sure everything's dispersed in there as best it can be. And then we will I'm going to allow that just a bit of time to sit in the pen to allow the shimmer to settle, just so I can make sure it made it into the pen. And then we will do a writing sample and see how it compares to the Wearing-Gall glitter potion. So giving that just an extra minute or two, we slowly rotate this. We can see that the shimmer did make it into the pen and has settled to the side, which is typical for pretty much any shimmer ink, which is why you should always give your pen a bit of a roll in between writing. And if you write for long periods, you may want to give it a roll just to prevent all the shimmer from settling down, as it will clog up a little bit faster sometimes. Mica powder all over the place. Now I will likely have to take a separate photo here to show off any shimmer that made it through. See which one I had in each of these pens, I never remember. So that's going to be the Skull and Roses in that one there. So this one here should have the nitrogen with the glitter potion from Wearing-Gall. So we'll do a sample with that just to compare the two. So it actually does not appear to have affected the color particularly much between the two, which is actually surprising. I figured the pigment in the mica powder may cause some change, but at least to my eyes they look quite similar. So I'm going to take some close-ups of these writing samples with some harsh lighting from the side to highlight the shimmer and see if we can show off the differences here. So before I give you my thoughts on how I think this worked out, we will do a little bit of a disclaimer. Of course, when you're making your own shimmer ink or mixing any ink in general, you should definitely do it in a separate sample vial if you can. Adding a whole bunch of random powders or even the store-bought glitter potion here could react poorly to different inks. They haven't been tested and everything. And this here is just some mica powder I picked up from the dollar store, so that's definitely not intended for fountain pen use either. So by doing it in this, you don't ruin your whole bottle of ink. And you can allow it some time to sit in here and see how well it handles in the ink, and then fill up from your pen from there as long as nothing bad happens. These pens here, some I picked up a while back on Amazon. I was able to get 4 of them fairly inexpensively. They're piston fill pens, transparent so you can see in them. And I picked them up for the purpose of doing weird experiments with ink because I have multiple of the same pen. That way it's an apples to apples comparison. And since they weren't expensive, I'm not too worried about if something bad happens to these. I'll just pick up a couple more. No big deal. So with that out of the way, I have wrote with this a little bit, let it sit in here, and nothing immediately has happened, but I haven't let it sit for days and days or anything like that yet. As far as how well it writes, I would say it's fairly comparable to shimmer inks I've tried before. The shimmer flows through just fine, just like it does with the ones I've used with the glitter potion, as well as just some store-bought shimmer inks that have it already put inside. So personally, I have no issue adding a little bit of this mica powder to a sample vial of ink. That way I could make any ink I wanted into a shimmer ink. I probably would use a different color of the mica powders. I put the blue in this nitrogen, and it doesn't show up as much as I had hoped. The shimmer in this glitter potion here from Waringal is a blue, but as you can see when it separates out, it's more of an opalescent. So the blue comes from the refraction of light rather than it actually being blue. And they do make mica powders that are called interference is usually the name I see, but they look similar to this. They're more of a white powder that, with the light hitting it just right, makes the color show up differently. And typically in resin, you would use those interference micas over a darker base color. That way you can see the effect much more clearly. So I wonder if I picked up some of those, if it would give me similar results to the glitter potion here, or I could just use the silver and it would probably look just fine. I just wanted to use the blue because that matched what I had previously used, or at least more closely with what I had there. So just for completeness sake, I went ahead and filled up a good chunk of this page here just to see if I ran into any issues in the immediate of roughly a page worth of writing. My handwriting's fairly large, so this isn't as much as it could be, but it's definitely enough that I wouldn't feel uncomfortable using this in any of my pens, but everything I have is sub $50. That's kind of my cap personally, and so I'm not overly worried in any of the pens I have. If you had a vintage pen or something that you could not get replaced, I could definitely see not wanting to use shimmer ink in general, as it gets into the fins of your feed, and without disassembly and a toothbrush, it can be hard to get all of that out of there. Now with a pen that you can't see the shimmer in, it doesn't really matter. You might end up getting a little bit of shimmer even after you change out the ink, but since you can't see it in there, and it'll just kind of work its way out eventually. But with a transparent pen like this, you can see that it's in the feed here, and you will pretty much be able to see that forever without really deep cleaning the pen. So if you're on the adventurous side, or just really like shimmer ink, and maybe you have inks that don't come in a shimmer option, that you'd like to make a shimmer ink, picking up a different mica powder. These came from DollarTree, but you can definitely get them pretty much anywhere. Just a super fine pearlescent powder. Add a teeny tiny amount to a sample vial. I did just the tip of this plastic fork, used it like a little shovel to dig some out, and added that to around 5 milliliters of ink in a sample vial, and just give that a good shake and was good to go. So I would say try it out if you want to and see how it worked for you.